This is IBM Museum. In this video, I'm going to just be doing a straight planar swap on that PS2 Model 65SX. Probably nothing really exciting. The 65SX is one of the rare PS2 models compared to its close relation of the 55SX. And I've got the planar in there right now that, remember, I had the two floppy diskettes, 3.5 inch, that were wedged in here to keep the SIM modules that I've already moved over to the other planar. And I've benched the new planar. I've gone through and I've replaced some components on it, but it just going through and swapping in this planar I tested for the one that's in place now, just to get the system cleaned up a little bit, get a 65SX back into effect. Now, I will have a video soon on getting this into the same style of case. And this is actually the book I have is for the 6080 turbo processor, although the diagrams this looks closer to the power board that I have. And this is made by the Reply Corporation, and IBM even went through and since Reply was doing some replacement planars into their system, they even bought some of or bought into the Reply supply line to use those planars in the PS2s, is what they call the system board upgrade. And I'll be going over some of those. I have a Model 70 like this that has a Reply planar in it, rebranded as IBM, and I'll be covering that in a later video. But I'll be covering this, and I'll actually pull out the other the power board that I already have had mounted in a case for years. And these are, as you can see, the really great thing to where they can even have a Pentium overdrive CPU in here. They've got a cache module. This is even memory I had set aside for it. Each one of these is a 16 megabyte module. And so this will have 64 megabyte of RAM when I get done with things. And then it's got a Cirrus Logic video chip, and then the 2 megabyte, because it has these soldered on the planar, and then even the sockets fully populated. And this is just like it's fresh from the factory. I've had this bagged up. I've had it for years. Have never put it in place as of yet. And it's good too that I don't see any electrolytic capacitors on this board, because the Reply planars I've seen where they can have some electrolytic capacitors that leak, either just at minimum putting an oily sheen around the electrolytic, and at the worst, actually having corrosion where it leaks to the components of the planar. And if it's bad enough corrosion, of course, that damages the planar, makes it so it doesn't work at all. But this even has IDE built into it. It's just a planar that Reply had to swap into the Model 60, 65SX, and Model 80 cases. So that'll be a video that's coming up later on. I have most of the tools and other things that I'll need here. The adapters that I'll be putting in place. I do even have two of the memory adapters, and I got thinking a little bit that we had one of these I thought that didn't respond, didn't work, and so I'm kind of accounting for that factor by having two of the modules and the RAM for them, the SIMs available, that we can go through and test that when we run the reference diskette. And I'm just going to get started and pull the drive cage here first. Make short work of this process, so it's just not a big long boring video. And this might be more suited to a live style video, and I've seen another channel that I follow pretty closely. He's even prompting if his viewers, if that's something that they would enjoy, and there's probably a good chance that I can go over to that format with some of this as well. And okay, and we're just going to leave the drive in there. And this is a separate, specially made adapter for these cases. And I'm surprised this didn't have a grounding clip in place either. Just be gentle with these knobs, because these can break. And so there's the drive cage and the drive. And then we'll just go through to getting the planar out of there. And I hope this light and focus is doing all right. Looks like it is. And all these screws are all the same, even between the drive cage and I may have to look. I know that this clip and the socket I have is not exacting of that hex head side, but they're slotted as well. I was hearing it slip on some of the... I think I just undo that slightly, and I can take a... I can look how my spare planar is on how it is. Yeah, some of these I'm going to have where they're tighter. And yeah, that one's really... Ooh. I don't want to let that screwdriver just slip on, skitter across the planar or anything like that. I'd like to keep it as complete as I could. And this planar doesn't have those bodge wires in the center. I could go through and okay. Just trying to see. And really the only thing I'm doing that for is to get a planar in there that can retain that sim without any problem. Okay, one right in the center of everything. And it looks like all four of those side plastic pieces has lost that's lost plastic pieces and quite a bit of, okay. Another one hiding from me. And on this replacement planar, of course, with it benched, I went through and already modded. I have a modded DS1287 chip. I didn't go through, and this is an extra 2 KB of non-volatile RAM. And I have replacement chips for these, and I see the system complain when that module is out of the socket, but I've not seen it complain about a low battery state or anything like that. Okay, and I should have left my glasses on because I want to look. Okay, so the pair of BIOS chips, just to get that on camera, 3608, that's, okay, and that's the same FRUs as the planar I'm putting in, and I believe there's only one BIOS version that was released for the 65SX. And I'm extracting that math coprocessor pin. The beveled edge is here, and it's the same alignment as the labels on the chips otherwise. So there I've got that planar, and the labeling on, okay, so that's marked as a C-step 386SX. I'm hooked with the thread of my shirt. Okay, so let's just put that down there and get this planar up here, and I might start moving stuff. I'm probably going to leave all the other stuff, this cabling that I already had in place. And let's get the math coprocessor in place. And there are electrolytics on this planar. And there's also even though I haven't had it benched and I had it operational, I want to verify that it still is complete and there's not anything that looks bad. And I have to look because I think it's just the bottom. I guess that's more of a clip. Yeah. Like so. That still didn't seat. Let's take that screw out of there if it doesn't cooperate otherwise. Okay. Okay. Everything's looking good there. Remember, this is just the speaker pillar. Even though it has that battery spot, it doesn't have any contacts and all that. The CMOS storage, or that battery backed up non-volatile RAM, is in these modules. Okay. This is where I've got that super long, and I mean that wiring could be half that length, but that's the module that I would pass around to all the systems as I modified them, just to get them up and going. And I've even had a battery in there too. So since I've had this benched, and I think I ran through a reference diskette setup with that. But okay, and we should have 4 screws left for the cage after getting all these positioned. Even though the socket's a little bit big and slips, it can get the screws quickly in place to where I can tighten them the remaining steps with the slotted screwdriver. And the lettering is a little bit easier to see. This isn't marked as a C step or anything like that, but it should be a later 386SX anyway. If I had to guess, I would say that the planar I pulled out would be a later version. Though not always. This is a brown color, and this is more of a green color. And I've just seen IBM go through, and a lot of time the first version tends to be a brown color of PCB, and then when they come out with the later version, and this one has the bodge wires, which they would normally go through and they replace, they add the circuit traces to the later planars, so they don't require those bodge wires anymore. And this actually has a label over the VGA chip. Okay. I think everything is tightened down well enough. Since this is populated with the Sims, I'll try it first just to see if it'll respond. But I should have marked, I have a faint memory of one of those being bad, and I didn't mark it. And this drive cage, and we'll get that wiring out of the way, goes into slots on the back, and it has a pin on the front here. Okay. And then the 4 screws up front, and no diskettes required to hold down those Sims. And I took pictures of this planar before anyway, both front and back. I can give links to that in the video description. Yeah, and that's pretty typical for these drive cages, that they don't get, even with that pin, they don't get into the best position for screws. Oh, there we go. I think that went down better. Yeah, that lines it up. Just got to be seated all the way. And that doesn't have that retainer for the cable on it, but that's fine. Even though we don't have to spin these front ones down, I will. Okay, I'm going to move that memory adapter off to the side for the moment. I could go through, and this is the Tribble SCSI adapter. I think we had a late model microcode on it already. I don't want to kind of flex and make some crinkly sounds. Now, one of the things I'm not doing is this didn't have a XGA display adapter before. And the 65SX was really unusual for the fact that IBM put the SCSI adapter of the Tribble in place, and also that XGA for the display side. And that's how they released those models, just so they would have a little bit more power on the disk, hard disk subsystem and the video. Okay, and I can probably use even this middle power connector. And probably with this benched, I can just set the diskette drive. And I think this is a good diskette drive, but if not, I've got my go-to model that I know works. I just set that up there. And I'm going to need to connect all the cables. So I'll be pausing the video. I want to see how much we've gone through already. Half hour already. Okay. So I will be right back. Okay, so we have everything connected and ready to run the reference diskette. Let me bring out the size of that. Okay, so that's counting planar memory and the adapter. Well, no, it's counting planar memory. Excuse me. Because then it goes through and accesses the floppy. Okay, and I have the reference diskette in there. And I hear click, 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 click. Okay. So what I'm going to do, power it off, and I'll, so that, that floppy drive did not work for me. Power it on. And I think after it tries to access the diskette drive, it should count that other 8 megabyte that's on the adapter. But we'll see. And that may be that bad adapter. Okay, and the reference diskette is in the drive. Okay. Okay. And both of the adapters should have the ADF and even the memory configuration files. The initialization file for the memory adapter should be present on that reference diskette as well, because these were standard adapters for the 65SX. I heard the SCSI hard drive. Okay, and of course we're going to leave the reference diskette in place because we're going to get that time and date error on the next step. But it was good. We didn't get prompted for any different ADFs that it thought should be present. And with the XGA adapter, display adapter that was released with the 65SX, that the files for that should also be on that reference diskette as well. And I didn't have any XGA adapters at hand. I know I've got some stored away, but I didn't have any that I could lay my hands on. And I just thought the system didn't have the XGA adapter before. Okay. So there it's going through and it's counted above that 8 megabyte, and counting slower. That's that memory that's on the adapter. So that is the good adapter, or that adapter works. I'll have to further pin down if that any of the adapters I have around are that bad one that I remembered. And it should count all the way to that system maximum of 16 megabyte of RAM. And we will run through, we'll set the time. We can take a little bit of look at the configuration. And then I want to see if it'll boot whatever it'll boot to with that. And I have the mouse connected and close at hand if I need it, but Okay. Now it may have, when I benched it before, it may have had the time and date set if I get thinking about it. And it's just something else of why it complained about the adapter. So let's look at time and date first. Okay. And just slightly off. It looks like it is an even 20 minutes behind. So just lost 20 minutes of time from the time that I had it benched. Okay. I just want to briefly look over that configuration. Okay. Everything looks good there. Okay. And 120 megabyte standard IBM SCSI drive. And we see there that the Tribble SCSI adapter for the host SCSI ID is 7, and then on the hard drive itself is 6. And those SCSI IDs are from 0 to 7. Okay, F3. Okay. And revision level 0, which generally means the first and only, likely the only BIOS I think that exists for the 65SX. I'm not going to go through to test the system or anything like that in the reference diskette side. I just want to see if it'll boot, what it will boot, if anything at all, from that SCSI hard drive. And I can't remember before, when I had that benched, of whether and we have the slow count of that adapter RAM after the diskette drive seek. And we're coming up on 39 minutes of recording time. So it was about 10 minutes of going through that reference diskette process after the half hour that it took to swap the planars. And I can't remember off the top of my head whether the 65SX is a supported model under the system information tool or not. May have to look through that list. And I'm not going to run through the system information tool on this video either. I think once it does that attempt to boot to the hard drive, whether that's successful or not, that'll be a good place to wrap this up, and me having a 65SX system back together that I don't have to have diskettes in there. So it throws us into ROM basic, and that just meaning that hard drive is not bootable or anything like that. And I may have to, with a SCSI subsystem, I may go through and look at that drive from another, plugging into another host and seeing if I can get anywhere with it. But that is a good place to wrap this video up. If you like this content, go ahead and click on that like button. And please subscribe to my channel if you have not already. But that's all I have for now. This is IBM Museum. Thank you.